Hello, I'm Riley Nance, and I'm here to give a presentation on Resolume and visual programming and projection mapping for live events. Thank you to Dance Music Initiative and Make Music Alliance for having me out, and let's get started. A little bit about myself. I'm a music producer, and I produce music in Logic under the artist moniker EarthWave, and I run a production company that it's a small production company where we do small events, and we do visuals, lighting, sound, and so on and so forth. Some lighting and stuff as well. And yeah, so as soon as I know that we're going here, I'll get started. I'm just gonna check the link. Make sure that this is all working. Alright, it looks like we're good to go. I'm gonna set up some music here just so we have some sort of audio coming in. Hopefully it isn't too loud for you. Okay, so for those of you who have never used Resolume or anything like that before, this is a program that you use to create visual shows. You can use it for projection mapping. You can use it for big LED walls, or yeah, basically any sort of source that you want to add as a visual feed to your events to make them more entertaining for people to watch. And I'll start by walking you through the layout. These two channels here are just for my FaceTime camera down here, and then this is a live camera feed down in the left hand corner. So I actually have a camera aiming at it's a wood structure that I've painted, and then I've gone through and mapped that out using Resolume. So I'll eventually walk you guys through the process of doing something like that. So in Resolume we have what are called layers and then columns. So you can add your own video clips. I've kind of just added some ones in here today for some basic stuff, basic examples. So you can see my projector, which is behind this circular structure over here. I've basically cut out this shape to project only onto these triangles and these parts with my second layer. And on the first layer, I'm projecting onto this the rest of the circular element behind it. So if you are familiar with Resolume, you'll know that you can click through these tiles basically, either with a controller, or here I'm doing it on a computer because I'm using all my USB ports to create different visual textures. And you can control the visibility with these toggles here, or there's ways to set it up so that you can use this crossfader here in between the sides, but today we're not going to really use too much of that. Today we're going to just focus on projection mapping and effects, and we'll go over some of the basics first, how to kind of take a clip, a visual clip, whether you made it yourself or or you got it offline somewhere and you want to kind of alter it to make it more interesting, or have more texture or more going on. So you can see that like right now I'm playing this Galaxy, and then on one I'm playing this clip here that's called Strobe Lesson. So this will be the first thing that I teach you guys. So basically on each of these layers here, there's different modes that you can have. So there's an autopilot function that allows you to automatically trigger the next clip by clicking play next clip. So after that visual is done playing, you'll see it will switch to this next one. So if all these here on autopilot are set to play next clip, it will jump to each of the next clips and automatically run through. So you can have it on autopilot. Oh, I lost my camera feed. Let me readjust that here. See if I can get it there. Okay, now we're back. So you can see that this one is just moving through. Now at the end you could go into your autopilot here and you could go play first clip. And what that will do is on this layer, it will bring you back into the light show clip at the beginning here. So this is just kind of some generic lighting that I pulled off of the internet. And let's say that we wanted to get creative with this. So for now I'm going to turn autopilot off, and if you have layer determined on, that means that you can select the same autopilot settings from your layer here, and you could just make it so the whole layer automatically plays the next clip. But I'm going to go ahead and switch this to do nothing so we can kind of adjust this clip and maybe add an effect. So in our window to the right here, we're going to have this effects tab. And so I've kind of made some of my own presets in here, where I can recolor. I could, take an existing video clip. Let's say I wanted it to all play in red. I could drag this onto here, and that will essentially go down here underneath. This is where your clip will be showing the effects and the, if you wanted to adjust the scale, or you wanted to adjust, rotation, position on screen. That's where it allows you to do that. So I could go here, I could make this all, kind of at amber color. You could make it yellow. You could go blue. You could put automation on it so it changes to your own colors. Or you can just draw in your own. You can make this white if you wanted to have an all black and white clip, or if you wanted to do this sort of live and you wanted it to match the lighting engineer, you can coordinate with someone and then say, okay, at this point in the show, or while this artist's playing, like, you're going to go all white with the visuals, he's going to go all white with the lights, and then you'll have a blackout. So you can use those sort of tools to work together, is the way I'd put it. So the next thing I want to walk you through is another effect, and this is strobe. It's a fairly popular effect. I'm going to go ahead and turn this one off autopilot. So I'm going to turn the music up here for a minute. And 1 second. If I come back into this clip here, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to talk over the music, and you'll see that this clip starts flashing white, and that's because I have this strobe effect on it. And now in this clip, what I've done, if I bypass this here, you'll see it's just a regular clip that's flashing. Now if I unbypass it, you'll see whenever there's a kick drum or a low bass element, it flashes white. And that's because I've set this section here to lows. So if you click the L there, it's going to give you a range. I'm going to narrow this down even farther because I only want it to be on like the kick drums. And how you can adjust the level of intensity of that triggering is by using this gain knob here. So it works a similar way to, you can imagine a DAW would use, like Logic or Ableton would work in engaging a compressor or something like that. Now, over here I've created an envelope. So if you click on this little tab there, it's kind of invisible, but there's this little arrow. So you can add in your own, I guess, modulators by creating an envelope. Now, I'm using audio, so that's going to be your external FFT. I won't get totally deep into that, but basically in your settings, you're going to bring in your audio as an external FFT. Now, you can use that directly out of an interface. So if you are doing a show live, basically you would wire 2 wires or a single wire to an audio interface to your computer where you're using this program, and that will allow you to sync your audio and create effects. So if I wanted to do like a zoom on this every time that the bass drum hits, so if we can minimize this strobe here, let's go ahead and minimize some of this other stuff too. So we'll put some infinite zoom on here. Now, generically, the way that it's set up is so that it's just continuously zoomed in. But if what we want to do is kind of make this move to the music, we can go here and we can choose external FFT. And then what we'll do here is bring our gain up. And then the fall is the rate at which it goes back to its normal size. So I go ahead and turn my gain down here and bring the fall down so it comes down quicker. Now if I click this little arrow, that's how I get to this low, mids, and highs section. So if you wanted it to come off the highs, which would be, very quick and aggressive, you would just solo that high section. If you wanted it to come off the mid or like a snare drum, you can kind of fine tune that frequency range within here. I'm just going to make it the bass elements, and so I'm going to go ahead and do the zoom. And then we could automate our range to have a similar parameter so that these are both moving in sync with the bass. And this adjusts the overall amount of the effect. So same with the zoom here. So that's those parameters. We can go ahead and turn up the gain. Now we're getting kind of fun with the music here. Now you can wire in a controller, and then you could make it so that these are easily bypassed. So if you just have a drop come in, or intense chorus or what have you, you can just make this so that they're selectable with a one keystroke. Alright, so there we learned about strobe and infinite zoom. So let's go ahead and learn some other effects before we kind of continue on to the mapping portion and the rest of our video here. So You know, one of my kind of pet peeves is that a lot of visual artists will just download, it's like this is a just kind of basic video from YouTube, and a lot of people will just download whatever they find on YouTube and then they'll just play it. They don't get super creative with it, and they'll end up just, you know, going out live, and then I see the same clips over and over and over. And so I think, you know, utilizing this effects section here, you can get really creative with, you know, almost turning your visuals into new visuals and something new and exciting for people to watch. So like I could drag, you know, let's say we did cube tiles on the nauseating setting. I mean, this is a little extreme, and our rotation is a little too fast here. I mean, this could get really crazy if you start doing like a stringy sphere. Where is it? Stingy sphere. Sorry. So we can turn up our resolution to get more intricate with it here. We can go to our zoom here. We could do the same thing that we did with the other one, is the you know, automation to the bass. So we're gonna start this, you know, higher up here. Then we're gonna raise up our gain here. Have this affect the size of this sphere. So we can change this to wired and bring down our resolution here. It's a little harder to see. Let's see. We increase our other parameters here. Okay, well, so that's stringy sphere. You can kind of create some effects with that. We can go ahead and take cube tiles off. Now, on this clip, I opted to, when I was going through beforehand, find an effect that I liked, and that happened to be displace. And it looks like this. So it kind of retains the same originality of the clip that made me like this clip. And so what I did here is I created an envelope, and now instead of using audio this time, what I opted for doing was a BPM sync, which will basically just walk you through, if you have your BPM here, if you're tapping along and or using an external clock, to have your beats perfectly timed with the artist who's performing. Basically, this will give you control over the movement across those beats. So if I lower this down, you'll see it comes back down to being the original clip right there, and then comes back into this distorted look. I like to have it almost level, where it kind of planes out for a minute. Okay. So you can do stuff like shift glitch to create some sort of glitchiness. again, all of this stuff you can trigger from a controller, so you can get super creative with it on the fly. And then, you know, as intensity and songs start coming on, you could have this intensity raise up. Okay, so we go over to here, Arena. So this is where your audio FFT, I'm using input 1, and then you go through your audio input gain. And that basically allows you to control the level of the music coming in. So let's take a look at our output section now. So right now I have a projector, and that is my display 2, but we're going to go ahead and go into advanced. And so let's see, if we go to our output transformation, this is what I have going on down in this circular area down here. These are basically just shapes that I hand drew or cut out and then drop them into Resolume here. So let me go ahead and save this here. I'm going to save it as Make Music Day. Original mapping. Okay, hit enter. Now I'm going to go and create a new preset. So you could have different shapes going on in here. Let's see if I can maybe drag this one up. So I don't know if you can see now, but on my projection it's projecting in this area. So I've really got like 3 different projections going on now. I've got the one that's rotating in the background, I've got the one on these tiles, and then this one's a mixed of the 2 inside of the hexagon here. So let's go on and make a new, just a new preset here. Now you'll see it just pops up originally with my desktop, but we're going to go here to our display 2. Okay, now we're projecting on this, and you can see it's projecting onto the wall behind it and my desk over in the corner there, and that's not really what we want. And so what we're going to do here is on our slice, we're going to do an input mask. And so since this shape is a circle, let's just cut off the areas that are dark here in the background. And we can do that by adding a circle. And then we could go to edit points, and basically we're just going to drag these in until we see it to start, you see it start to cut off the circle. But we're going to just bring it to the edge of my circle on the inside of that white line. We're going to bring it down from the top. If we need to add another point here, we can. We could bring that edge in a little bit. Now you can also get more microscopic with this by clicking on a point and then using the arrow keys to move it around. So sometimes it's just easier to use your up and down arrows to make it more precise. So now that we have our circle here, let's just try making some shapes on this cutout. So excuse me here. We can click this plus sign and we can say we can create an output mask. Now you can invert, so we can create a black area or mask out a zone. so I can move this up and around. And now if you're looking here, you can see that the inside is blacked out. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. Let's go to our output mask. So this slice is basically taking the input here and telling us where we're seeing it from. So on this one, let's do layer 1 or layer 2. So on this mask, we got a triangle here, and you can see on my cutout over here that it's now gone into the center triangle. So what we can do is we can resize this by holding Shift and Alt. We'll keep the triangle perfect. And what I'm going to do is drag this up into that upper triangle that we created here. So now we can take these points and we can go into Edit Point, and we're going to click on the top one, and then we're going to go ahead and bring this down. And I'm not sure how well you can see it, but I'm just making it perfectly match that top triangle. Now this bottom corner, I'm making it come inside. And same thing for the bottom right. Now, in a perfect world, we'd be able to just drop a triangle onto here, and it would fit perfectly because the shape is drawn perfectly on this cutout that I made. But unfortunately, that's just not how it works. And so what we can do here, you just have to adjust it, because your projector's probably not going to be perfectly centered on the stage, and the object that you're projecting onto is not going to be perfectly squared up with you from the stage. You know, maybe in the venue you have to put the projector off to the right hand side and then squeeze the image so that it still shows up correctly. It's just unfortunately something we have to deal with. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this mask. Now on that second mask, we can go to our transform, and then we can drag it. So now I'm going to drag this over to our second triangle, and we'll go back to edit points. Now I'm going to just use my up and down arrow to get this into the spot that I want it. Now, it's so small on the computer, I wish I could make it larger, but then it would end up projecting into the visual from my camera feed down here. Okay, so got that there. We're going to duplicate this mask again. We're going to go back to transform. The transform will allow you to adjust its scale or invert, which would make it black on another object. I'm going to kind of use my arrow keys to shift this into place, and then I'm going to clean up the points and make them right in those triangle points. Okay, got 1, 2. And let's see if we can get our third one. Okay, now we got our 3 triangles. Let's do another copy, and we're going to do the one in the middle. So if we just click duplicate again, and go to transform, drag this one to the center. Now we're going to try something different here, because if you notice on the projection here, our triangle is upside down. So if you hover towards the corner, you can rotate this around. Try to get it as straight up and down as we can, and then we can use the arrow keys to drop this into place, or maybe just pull it. Now we can go back to edit points, clean this up. grab the corner here. Bring this down. Okay. Basically, what I'm looking at, and if you guys just think about this, when I'm adding this projection on, I'm bringing the edge of these dots over just so I can see a little bit of black between this dark black line and the actual visual being projected. And then I'm bringing it back onto right back to that line by using my arrow keys. It's really hard to see. You guys can't see it from your point of view, but that's what I'm doing. So I'm just coming right up to the edge and then bringing it back so it fills in that gap totally. Now what I want to do here is go and rename these so that when we have a whole bunch of different parts, we're going to know what we're looking at. So I'm going to call this one top triangle. We can do this as left. This would be our right triangle. And center triangle. Now, if I save and close this, so let's go ahead. Before you do that, I usually like to create a new preset here, so I can recall this. You know, I have different shapes. Like I have an eagle, I have two wolves that are standing next to each other, and that's because I have cutouts of those shapes that I've made. And if you spend a bunch of time like 3D mapping a you know, large wolf, and it's super detailed, and you have all these points on there, you want to save it so you can recall that easily, so you don't just get to the gig and go, oh shoot, you know, I have to just trace this out by hand. Otherwise you're going to be doing it during the performance a lot of times, unless if you get there early enough. So let's go ahead and save this. Say June 21st. And happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. So I want you to take a look at a couple things now. So if you didn't notice, on this visual here, we're not seeing any of that within our shape here. And so that's because this is on layer 1. This visibility is turned all the way up, as are these two. That's just so you can see me and you can see this video feed here. But we're not seeing this one because this visual is completely playing over this visual. And that's just what we're going to see in our output monitor. But if we go to our back to our advanced output, if we wanted to create a new slice here, we can transform this object basically. So if we do an input mask, let's just put a square on there for now. Okay, we're going to go to our slice 2, and we're going to change this from composition to layer 1. Let me exit that one. Let's just save and close this for a second. Let's add this galaxy that's in the background here. I'm going to take it off autopilot so that it doesn't play a new clip. So, okay, back to our output section. Now we're seeing the galaxy everywhere, but if we drag this slice down to the bottom here, if we come back to slice 2, we can do layer 1. Okay. Rearrange these here. Excuse me, I'm having some difficulty here. Let's do a slice. Input selection. Okay. Why am I not getting it here? I'm doing something wrong, so I'm just going to go back to my last preset and see where I kind of mess this up here. So I created these different slices. They look like this, like that, which if we look at the output transformation, you can see it's kind of grayed out here. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know why. I must have had them in the wrong order. But this is just filling in that upper corner. Now this one's filling in the bottom. And then this is the main structure in the middle. So if I go to edit points, you'll see this better. And this is just drawn in by hand. They kind of overlap in the center here. And then there's this line there that this basically is a bar that comes out over to these to meet the structure. So it comes up, it expands there, and it comes around. Now, let's go ahead and make a new slice here. It should work on this one. Let's see if we do an input mask. Composition, layer 1. So if we just drag that down, you can see on my visual here me moving this shape. So let's kind of mute some of these here, and that's how you mute or disengage a visual clip where it's being masked. You can see by clicking this little box next to the slice. So if I wanted to just start drawing this shape in, so we were working with two visuals on the same projector. Basically, I can go to edit points here, and you can see these are 4 points, and basically I'll drag this over to fill in the shape. I'll maybe start there, then let's work our way up to the top of this. I'm going to bring this last point down over here and draw it to that edge. And what I want to do is go through and just create little zones through which I'm projecting, so that my you know, art piece is complete once I'm done with this. So if I'm doing this for a gig, sometimes you have to do it really quickly, and so I'll just get the main piece done and then clean up the points afterwards. So I could duplicate this slice here. So now we have this slice. We can go ahead and take this. We could draw this in pieces, or we could draw it as one whole art piece. So if I just drag that over there, we go back to edit points. I'm just going to shift this into place. So you can do this with more or less pieces. It, you know, on my last one I opted to use just one, but you could go ahead and just project onto certain areas if that's what you wanted to do. Now if I drag a different visual across that layer, it's going to just project onto that area. So let me go ahead and duplicate this one more mask, and then I'll kind of start walking you through why it's doing what it's doing. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate. So now we have our mask again. Let's go ahead and rotate that so we get the bottom one. I'm going to go ahead and drag it towards its area so we can kind of clean this up a little bit. Kind of shift it down and over. Now let's go to edit points. I'm just going to clean this up real fast, and then we will drop some other visuals onto it. So it's kind of weird because if the object that you're projecting on is not angled, like this circle here, I just have leaning up against the wall. So sometimes that kind of bends the light, so you'll have to add an additional point to kind of make it so it fits perfectly. I don't know if you just saw what I was doing there, kind of just bringing this down. If you watch the projection down in the left corner, this will be easier to see. Okay. Okay, so save and close. Now if I drag in like a different clip, like let's say this one of water, or this one where it's kind of like a stringy water like feature, we can project two different visuals at the same time and create really interesting textures, really insane mappings, where and you're not limited to two. You could go in and we could add a new layer here. Let's do composition, or new. Let's do insert below. Let's keep this one as layer 2, so it projects onto there because we have that there. Now if we went to our let's just go into my files here and drag in a new visual. So I keep all my visuals organized into a folder. Let's find something. Yeah, this one's pretty bright, so see. Okay, let's use this stretch button here. So if you notice, now we're only seeing this visual on the screen, but what's actually projecting is completely different. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off autopilot and bring this clip back. Now if we go into our output mapping, we can go even farther down this. Like, let's create a new slice. source, we're going to do layer 3. Now, what we're going to do is an input mask. And we can start with a triangle here. Let's go ahead and put it on these outer corners here. Okay, just going to clean up this edge. Bring this over here to the top. Sorry if you're having difficulty following me. I'm in this upper left corner here. So I'm just clicking in some new points. Move that out. This visual is maybe a little harder to see. Okay, we can go ahead and we can duplicate this. Go ahead and drag it over to the other side. Then we can rotate it. Drop it into this area. Now that won't actually rotate the video on it. It will just adjust the area of this visual that it's projecting. Again, we can do that again. See, and now we're creating this pretty unreal triple visual mapping here. So let's drag this onto here. Edit our points. We can drag that into there. Now, projecting mapping always makes an event, you know, pretty awesome, because you can make amazing textures with this stuff and create some really, really like amazing visual elements that bring just so much to a show. Go ahead and bring this up. I've had some of my music playing in the background here. I'm kind of just drawing in this center shape. It's kind of weird right now because I've got too many points going on, but it'll all make sense in a minute. It helps if you probably watch this down here. I'm working on this leg right here. Cool. So I'm just adding in points. Now this is more of like a custom shape here, so what I'm gonna do is just add these points as I go. So right now I'm adding a point right here, and I'm gonna kind of add some of these and just drag them across and fill in this shape as I'm working on this here. So we get this amazing visual texture in the center of our program here. Now, I don't know if you see this over here, but it will also black itself out. I don't know if you can see that point that I stretched across, but if it overlaps itself, it will kind of get these black lines on them. So just something you want to be careful about, trying to get it to be as perfect as possible. And so what I'm going to actually do here is that there's this little split line on in the paint on this board, and so I'm going to actually match it to that line so people don't even see the overlap, so it doesn't just disappear. Okay, almost done with this shape. I'm going to drag that up so I can add another point and then bring this back down here. I know that this has been somewhat advanced. I hope that you guys have been able to follow along. I think that this is, you know, possible for people to do who don't have too much experience within the program. But I mean, what we're doing is fairly advanced. So definitely, you know, takes some skill to do this, especially if you're out like on the fly and you're having to set up a projector and set up your objects on stage, and you're just doing a whole lot at a show. You know, it's hard for me to do this at my events because a lot of times I'm setting up sound and a whole bunch of other stuff, and so going in and, you know, hand drawing out these shapes and whatnot can be extremely taxing. I'm going to try to fill up just the last 3 spots of this, and then I'm going to wrap it up and hand it over to our next musical artist. So I'm going to go ahead and take one of these masks that we had before, and I'm going to duplicate this. Just so we can fill out our shape here. And then we'll have projection mapped our first object together. Okay, I'm going to edit my points. Almost done. Okay, almost done. We got 2 more areas, and then we'll have filled up this entire shape. Duplicate one more time to the mask. And you can see how this can kind of get confusing to be looking at all these different slices and masks. And you can organize it better, but just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through and rename all those. We're almost done. We're just cleaning up. And now we've done it. So make sure and go and save your preset so you don't lose it for next time. And now look at our output transformation. We've got all this happening in the program. We got 3 different layers of visuals, and we got an amazing visual piece. I mean, it looks kind of funky in this window here, but when you see it on the actual piece of art there, I mean, it is wicked looking in person. I mean, you can't get this kind of sort of entertainment for a show without going through this process and creating something like this. I mean, it just looks amazing when you set this sort of stuff up. And now it's the fun part. You just get to drop your amazing visuals onto this and create different textures. You know, I've got like a beach, and then I've got these weird aliens, and I can drag in some more to the other pieces. Let's maybe give something like this so it's not, you know, we just got these evolving textures, and we got robots and skulls, and you know, I'll kind of organize those by what their main intention is. So like where I have this, you know, visual of these skulls and weird people dancing, that's kind of like my main. And I would say on this visual that these triangles are the main area, as well as these kind of boxes here. But yeah, I need to resize this clip here, and you can do that again just by clicking this. Thank you guys so much for having me. I go by EarthWave, and I run Substorm Productions, and we also have an event called Shavu. Definitely come check it out if you're ever in the Orange County area and you hear, you know, we're having an event, or we're, you know, co-producing an event with somebody else. Thank you again to Dance Music Initiative and Make Music Alliance for having me. The next artist will be on is called DJ Resonance, and he's going to be teaching an intro to music production in Ableton Live. Thank you guys so much. I just want to wrap it up here with saying, you know, keep progressing on your visual skills, and you know, just continue to learn. You know, when I started doing all this event production and whatnot, I had no idea how to do this. It was something I taught myself. You know, there's great sources like YouTube out there, or videos like this. So, you know, just keep pushing and keep grinding. Like, you'll get to be fantastic at what you do. You just have to try. And yeah, just keep chugging along. I am it's 8:59, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to DJ Resonance and let him take over the feed. I'm gonna go ahead and turn
Hello,
it
everyone.
over to DJ Resonance and let him take over the feed.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I want to give a big shout out to DMI and Music Alliance for hosting this event. I also want to say thank you for DJ EarthWave for hosting this. So today I'm pretty much going to be going over Ableton and then kind of detailing the layout and how everything goes, what you guys need to go to get started. What else? Yeah, so let's get started. Let's see. So right now I have a project open, and what you're looking at right now is called the arrangement view. So this is basically when you're producing a track, you're gonna be creating all these different like patterns, all these different sounds, and then you you basically arrange them into an order, and then you get your track out. Before I go too in depth with this, I want to show you one other section. It's called the session view. Now, usually you do not have to use the session view if you're producing a track. Mainly because when you're producing a track, you want to use arrangements. It makes it a lot easier to organize things. Session view is more for live productions. If you have like a how to say, like a push 2 or some other like synthesizer instrument that can hook up to Ableton, usually you can use Ableton Live and Ableton Live's session view for live performances. And yeah, so just a quick rundown on what we're looking at right here. I have my drums, I have my sub bass, my leads, synth plugs, ambience, FX, and down here you can see this is where I have, these are like the volume faders. But you can all access these on the arrangement view as well. It's just that the layout is a little bit different. So, but I'll show you where you can find them. And over here you have A and B, which are basically send and return tracks, where instead of having, say, like a reverb or a delay on just like every single track, you can have your reverb effects and your delay effects, and then just send your sounds through that. That way you don't have to use too much processing power on your computer, and it makes your track a lot cleaner. What I've learned over the past months learning Ableton is if you have too many reverbs or too many delays going on, it gets really like muddy. That way, having like 1 or 2, and then you just use those, and you adjust the wet and dry, it can make it sound much cleaner. You can really differentiate between the sounds. So that's one thing to take in consideration, but we're starting to kind of trail off here into the more advanced side of things. So let me go ahead and open the arrangement view. And then I want to show you guys also this section right here. The different categories, collections, and what to look for. Let's see. Okay. So up here, basically the collections is what it sounds like. It's a collection of sounds. But what Ableton does for you is that, say you buy a sample pack of sounds and you like them a lot, but there's a few that you don't care for, you don't want. So what you can actually do is go through those sounds and then favorite which ones you want. And they have different colors, different categories. And so the way I organize it, red for me, my favorites. I produce mostly techno, so my favorite, when it comes to all the sounds I have are, techno. Like ambience, strings, effect kicks, a whole bunch. So red for me is techno. Orange and yellow goes into the more heavier stuff, trap and dubstep. Trying to get into that, it's very tough. Green is more like lo-fi, mellow, and then blue is for house. So that's pretty cool, and I'll show you how you can do that. So like down here we have the places, aka like all your sound packs that you input. And just to quickly show you how you can do it, say you download a sound pack, put it on your storage somewhere. Like say you have you would like to have a dedicated one folder where you keep all your sound packs. This makes it so that if anything ever happens and you need to like re-upload everything's right there, and you can pull it back up, and you're quick and easy. You don't want to have them scattered everywhere. and making your life hard. So like say you download a sample pack that you really like. You go to all the way to the bottom and you're going to do add folder. And I have all my sound packs in my storage. I go to, let's see, these are all my sound packs right here. Future house, trance, dubstep. And then basically you're just going to select the folder. Oh, sorry. You're going to select the folder and just press select folder. And then once you select that, it should come up right up here. Usually they bring it all the way to the top. Little tip: organize your musics in terms of genres and or type of sounds. You know, like some sample packs come with like, you know, like this Total Dance V3 comes with claps, snares, kicks, everything. You know, but there is also sound packs where you can just like here, pads. For people who are new to this, pads are basically, you know, ambience, white noise, background noise to kind of just fill out the song. You know, I have abstract percussions, kick and bass drums, snares, and then towards the end of this tutorial, I'll show you guys a few websites, a few softwares you can look into that makes it really helpful in terms of, you know, pursuing music production with Ableton. I'll also go over forums for you guys to kind of like reference, and there's Facebook's group as well. So yeah, so that's pretty much, and then, you know, you just go down, find your sound that you like. Say you like this snare, okay? You can right click, and then here it is. So you just select whichever you want, and you press the color, and then if you press it, it should favor it, and you should get a little red square here, and then it should pop up in your favorites. Right now I have this feature turned off just to kind of like help with the processing, to make the stream a lot smoother for you guys. I did kind of like shut off a few features just so that I can make this as clean as possible and you guys can really see what's going on once we get to the arrangement and the production side of everything. So those, yeah, that's where all your packs are. The nice thing is, if you do decide to end up get Ableton, depending on which tier you get, they give you a bunch of audio effects, a bunch of samples, sounds, instruments. To be honest, like once you get Ableton, I would say for the first 4 months, do your best just to try and use what Ableton gives you. You could honestly make any sound, you can make any genre of music with what Ableton gives you. Yeah. Okay. And then, like, let me show you, like, here are samples. I have so many samples on Ableton, I've barely used most of them. And they give you this, like, with your pack. And there's always, like, new ones you can download that they have. If you go to packs right here, see? There's a whole bunch of different, you know, packs I haven't even, like, added to my list. You can go on their website. They have a bunch of free stuff if you buy Ableton. You know, they give you free stuff. And then like, so we'll go to sounds. So basically what sounds are, you know, like it is. You have different categories: pads, percussive, piano, strings, basses, ambience. They really make it. They really give you a really solid foundation on what you want to do. We'll get more into the sound design part later on. I just kind of want to go over this whole section for you guys and discuss what each one is. Let's see. So drums, it's just like, you know, when it comes to producing EDM or any, you know, like pretty much any genre, like drums are a very important aspect. Percussion, you know, it really sets the groove, it sets the mood, it's the foundation of your track. And, you know, and they really give you some really cool sounds in here. You know, 808s, 707s, 909s. These guys, you know, they've been here since back when EDM first came out, when it first started, and they were like for techno, 808s and 909s were like you heard them on almost every track. Um, and they give you loops, so you can see me playing a loop right now, just to kind of give you like a taste of what this pack has. So if I let me select this MIDI, double click it, give it a second to load up. Now you can see this 808 pack popped up. And then we can go through them. You got toms, you got rides, you got kicks, hi-hats, open hats, snares. I know that for the people who are just starting off, like once you expose yourself and just listen to endless amounts of sounds, you'll be able to like listen to a track and really dissect it down to its core. One moment, please. Let me just, I think there's an issue. I need to up my mic. Let's see. There we go. Hopefully that sounds a little bit louder for you guys. Okay. And then, so, these are the drum kits. They give you a bunch. You can, find one that you like depending what genre you prefer to produce. Go through them, have fun with them, make different patterns, see what you can make, look up rhythms, go on YouTube, go on Reddit, look up how to make, percussive rhythm, or like look up a song and try and, pick at it and see how you can recreate that same pattern. So drums is really useful. Honestly, when I first started, I would make 8-bar loop tracks. Just like tons of them, back to back. Just trying out different patterns, trying out different sounds, different effects, which we're going to go into right now. So first thing, I want to go through some of the instruments that we have here that they provide. Some of these I haven't really gotten a chance to use, just because like depending on what I'm trying to make, I would use a different instrument. But one of my most favorite one would be the wavetable. This can really make some really cool sounds if you guys know how to use it. Let me pull one up for you guys right now. That one of these YouTubers I follow, his name is AudioWave. He makes some really great presets. I've been a patron of his for almost a year now. And he put out this really amazing techno wavetable pack. So let me find a good one for you guys. Let's see. Actually, I got an idea. He gives you little samples to see what each one does, so we can go through them and kind of hear. Let's see. Okay, I like this one a lot, so let's go ahead and find it. So this is synth lead bass G minor. Let's see. Okay, synth lead bass. So synth, SOG lead, soft lead, lead bass, lead bass. Here we go. So here it is. Now, the reason it doesn't look like what I just showed you before is because what he did is that he created a preset. Now, a preset is basically like a grouping of a bunch of different effects with a core instrument. So, but you get this opening right here. If you go right here, see, you get this little tab, and this is wavetable. And then if I go right under it, this little tab right under here, if you look, you get all these effects and instruments. So here's wavetable, and you can see. So wavetable is basically a wave synthesizer with two oscilloscopes, and basically you just have a matrix that kind of programs how those waves move over time, the attack, the sustain. A lot of I don't want to get too technical, so I don't want to lose you guys, but basically it creates modulation, meaning that you have a waveform that changes over time, and then you have a second waveform playing on top of it that changes over time. Now they could be changing over time at the same rate, doing the same thing, or they could be doing different things to really give it movement, to really give it variation. So I'll just play a few notes for you guys to kind of see how it goes. See? So you kind of get that really, like, you know, ambience, high lead. Maybe I go down a little bit of an octave. Let's see how that goes. You know, that's really heavy, really dark. You know, so he's using echoes. He's using an amp to distort it. I'm gonna go into those effects in a minute, but let me show you. So right here, he has all these like audio effects playing. But let's see what happens when we turn them all off. So if you press this little yellow button, that basically turns off all the audio effects, and now we have just the wavetable playing. So let's hear it again. You see how it's very low, not a lot going on? Yeah. So let's see what happens. So he has an amp. An amp is basically what it does, it distorts the sound. So let's see how that have. Get a little more gritty. A little more character to it. So hear that? It's subtle. If you guys don't have headphones on or like decent speakers, you might not be able to notice the difference. But we'll just keep going on. Saturator kind of like brightens it up, so it sounds a little brighter. You can hear it better. It's not like muffled. Let's go to echo. Oh, so echo is like, as it's called, it echoes. Reverb, probably one of the most used effects in all my tracks. Reverb kind of, how to explain it? It kind of gives it like this hall effect. If you had a sound going through a hall, and the sound just kind of like travels through. You hear that? It kind of like fills it out more. And then he added a saturator again, just to kind of brighten it up. Because one thing with the reverbs is that if you add a reverb, it does fill it out, but it does tend to lower the sound a bit. So your effect might sound a bit, not duller, but just not as bright as it used to be. So adding a saturator after the reverb does give it a bit more color and brings it out. So you get that effect of the reverb, but you're not also losing your lead sound. You see how it just brought it up a lot? But you still have the reverb effect in the back. Yeah. So I would say wavetable is one of the main ones I like to use, just because you can really use it to create really cool leads. I won't get into this section just yet because it's getting a little bit too far out from what I'm trying to do. We'll go back to the instruments right now. Let's see what other ones. Analog. Let's see, collision. Let's look at analog right now. So analog is, you can kind of consider the same as a wavetable. It's just like it. So when you get to music production, you kind of get two different types of sounds. You have analog sounds, which are a bit warmer, and then you have digital sounds, a little bit more coarser, a little more, digital. And a little history lesson is way back when, before they had, like softwares like, Ableton, to kind of like, where you can have presets and instruments already on your computer. They would would use actual instruments, like a Sub 37, a TR-909 drum machine. And so since those machines used cathodes, circuit boards, resistors, the sound it will make was a bit more warmer, a bit more like full. And then once we got into the whole, computing age, you started getting a whole bunch of preset instruments, but they couldn't produce that same sound an actual physical instrument would make. So, how to explain it? But the nice thing is now we got into a point where we can reproduce these sounds on a computer rather than having to go buy like a $500, $600 instrument just to get a sound that you like. So if we play it, pretty harsh, but you see how it's hard to explain. It comes with time. When you listen to so many sounds, you're able to really distinguish between what's a digital sound and what's a analog sound. So let me see if I can find an analog synth lead for you guys to listen to. Yeah, there we go. This is a very this is analog. I would call this an analog sound. Sorry. Very warm. And then a digital would sound more like, let's see, electric. We'll go to synth keys. It's too mellow. Let's see. Where can we find one? Oh, you know what? I think I know. One genre of music that uses a lot of digital sound comes to rhythm and dubstep. So let's see if we can find like a little sound effect. No, these are all. I know where we can find you guys. Let's go to plugins. I'm gonna use a plugin real quick, just make it easier to find it. I'll go over this plugin later on. It's a very useful one. It's an amazing one. Let's see. Here we go. Rhythm. Let's see. Maybe we can do. Let's see how this goes. Let's see how this sounds. Yeah. So let's see. Hear that? Very digital, very harsh chorus. If you look at the wavetable, you see how it's all over the place. Very sharp lines. While an analog would look more like. Let's look at this. See, analogs used to produce something like this. Very fine, very smooth curvatures compared to a digital, how you saw beforehand. So depending on what kind of feeling you're going for in your track, you might want to kind of consider, do I want to use a digital sound or do I want to use an analog? Because those can really change how your track comes out. Okay, so let's see. Let me go back to, was it operator? No, sorry, not operator. It was analog. There we go. Yeah, and we can go through a few sounds to kind of see. Let's go through a few synth leads, see what they have. You can kind of see when I was playing through those sets of sounds how a few of them sounded very similar. That similarity you're noticing is the analog, the way a sound is outputted from an analog. So like last time, this is a preset that someone made, but they're using the core instrument of the sound comes from the analog tool. so when it comes to stuff like sustain and attack and all these other features, I'm going to use Serum because it's a lot more visually friendly than this. But once you learn how to use it, it's very translatable. Like honestly, once you learn all these different plugins I'm using, all use basically the same features. It's just how they interact with each other that gives you different sounds. But if I learned about like how to use the detune, octaves, shapes, noise, frequency, LFO, you can really like take that information, go to another preset or plugin, and then you'll see them there. But if you try doing the same thing on that instrument versus the other one, you're actually going to get a different output. Like I said, it's because how these instruments interact with each other gives you different sounds. Sometimes subtle, other times really big. Yeah. Once we hit 9:30, I'll start going into the music production side of things. I kind of want to go over this section because it's pretty important to know where to find the tools that you need to use to produce a track. So let's see here, this one. Ooh, pretty heavy. Let's go up an octave. Okay. Let's see what we do. So let's turn off some features. So I'm gonna turn everything off. Let's see how it comes out. Pretty heavy. It's a sustained note, meaning that you just hit, you hit your key and it kind of stays at that note. So let's turn on oscilloscope 1. Basically, what it does is that you have this profile right over here. So what it looks like is that, yeah, it's just hitting one note. Your attack, which is this bar right here, your sustain, and there's no decay. Let's see what happens if we change it. You hear that? So what I did is that I said basically the pitch at the attack, or like when I press the key, is going to start up high and then comes down and it sustains. Let me go a little higher. I don't know if you can hear that. It takes time to kind of hear these effects. For you it might just sound like one note, but it's a very subtle difference. So the way I learned these instruments, honestly, is like how you're looking. I'm literally just playing around, trying out different notes until I get something that I like. So that's honestly the best way to do it. You can watch a bunch of YouTube videos that tell you how to do it, but you're not gonna really hold that information in until you do it yourself. So I want to kind of go into the whole effects tab for you guys to look at. Let me just delete this. So audio effects. Let's see. Actually, let's keep that sound. We can use it for our audio effects. So cool. So I have it ranked in terms of my most used. So my most used effect is EQ8, utility, and reverb. When you're producing a track, EQing is probably one of the most critical aspects of producing a track, because it can really like make or break your sounds. It can really like set the mood. You can get rid of a lot of unwanted resonance, a lot of unwanted sounds that can really like, you don't notice it if you're listening to a full track, but over time your listener is not going to like, there's going to be a reason they're not going to like it. You can have the most amazing melody and the most amazing percussives, but if you don't have good EQing, your listener is going to get bothered. They're not going to like listening to it, and they're just going to leave. So EQing is one of probably the hardest, because you really need to train your ear, and it's really important to do. So here you have your audio effects, and you have all your lists. I'm going to go through the main ones right now just because of time's sake. so I can show you guys some production tools. So when you open it, if you look, there's a little arrow next to each effect. They're usually presets. So like this EQ wave, they have presets for different drums. You know, they have effects for hi-hats, kicks, racks. But it's not like you have to use them specifically. Honestly, like sometimes I might use a hi-hat on a snare, and then what it produces is actually a really good open hi-hat. You know, so it's all like plug and play. See what happens. Try it out. You never know. And they have filters and for instruments and a whole bunch. But usually I like to start like setting it myself. So let's go ahead and open it. And here's your EQ weight. So if I play a tune, you can see it. You can see it coming up on the EQ8. So, like say I want only up to 1K hertz. What I can do, select the interval. Usually go for the ends if you're trying to filter out. So go ahead, and then I would select 1. Then select right here, 1 is selected. Press this filter bypass, low pass. And then just go ahead, grab it, and then just adjust it on how you want. And I said I want it all the way back at 1. And let's hear it. See that? Or say you want it a different way. Say you want, you want to take all the highs out. You can select 4. But this time you want to select this one right here. You can see? And then I can drag it over here. Let's hear it. This can make a really good pad if you wanted to. So that's the EQ weight. One thing to learn about EQ weights, you never want to do this. You never want to like peak it. Because what it does, it creates, it causes something called resonance. And resonance to the ears, ironically, I have the name, to the ears is pretty unwanted. It bothers the listener. But at times also resonance can really like fill out your leads. And I'm going to show you a few examples of how resonance can really help your sound come out. But when you're EQing, 2 things to take into consideration when you're EQing, at least as a beginner. So you have a lead sound, percussive. You want to avoid this range. Let me open here. You wanna avoid this 100 mark, like from 100 to like 300. So a lot of times when you see me EQing, I'm gonna have a dip right here. The issue is that this is called like, I think they call it like brown frequency, where if you have too much of it in a track, it makes it muddy. It makes it all over the place. You can't distinguish what sound is what and where it's coming from. So to really clear it up, make sure that each sound you go through, you might want to just like EQ a little bit of it away. I'm not saying to like completely take it out, because then you're gonna lose a lot of your sub bass, because that's where your sub bass sits. But for something like hi-hats or your synth leads and your plucks, you're not gonna need it, and it'll actually clear it up, make it sound clearer if you take away this frequency, and it leaves room for your sub bass to like really pop out and really add some meat to your track, makes it heavy. So that's the EQ. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. Utility is pretty basic. It's honestly just a gain. You can increase the volume and decrease it. When producing a track, you always want to do a -6 decibel mix down. What that is basically when you put your drums or your kick in. I like to start with my drums. When you put your drums in, I put it at -6. And then from there, that's going to be your foundation on all your other sounds, making them lower or louder. The reason for this is because once you get a track done, you get it EQ'd and ready to go, you're going to go to the next phase, which is mastering. Mastering is basically when you really clear up, you get that high quality music that you hear at festivals. I'll share an example of how mastering can really like bring out a song and really, add power behind it. Really clear up that muddiness I was talking about earlier. So that's one thing. That's utility. So you could go into the session view and then do it here where you lower it -6. But personally, like, I don't want to have to keep going back and forth, so I use the utility. And it makes it really easy when you're doing automation, which I'll show you in a minute right now. And then here's the reverb. This will be the last audio effect I go through, so I can kind of give you guys time to go through the track. So with added, okay, pretty bright. And let's add the reverb. Here, let's add a bit more. So dry and wet, it's like how much of the effect is actually being applied. So 100% is like all the reverb is gone through. You hear that? Sounds like it's in a hall. Yeah. So that actually sounds like a really nice horn. I might actually save that for later. Okay. Okay, so now I'm kind of gonna take you guys through the track that I've done. Quick side note, when I first started, it took me about 3 months to finish my first track. Because I was being very meticulous and honestly did not come out right. It's okay because it was your first time, but once you're starting to make tracks, really like give yourself a deadline of, say, when you're starting off, I would say give yourself a month. Because you still need to learn the software, you still need to learn how everything goes and how it works. But once that 1 month hits, just drop that project, go on to the next one. Because you get stuck in this one song and then you're just going to kind of go backwards. You're not going to be learning much. I noticed that every track I moved on to, my time frame of finishing a track was smaller and smaller. It went from 3 months down to like a month and a half. Month and a half went down to a month, and now not this track but the latest track, it took me 4 or 5 hours, and I have pretty much all the parts to it. I just need to arrange it and EQ it, and it's good to go. The professionals, honestly, they spend 3 days 3 days putting it together, mastering it, not mastering it, but like EQing it and arranging it, and then just they send it out to get mastered, and that's it. So that's what your goal needs to be, is really making sure you can like output quick. Because if you start spending too much time listening to that track over and over again, you're actually going to be hurting yourself and hurting your track, because you're going to get tired of it. You're not going to be putting out quality anymore. So make sure that's a goal, and that's why you want to, it's kind of counterintuitive, but you want to start off with quantity over quality. Because what quantity gives you, like I said, the more you produce, the faster you are. And then once you get to a point where you can produce a track in like 3 days, then you can start focusing on sound design and sound engineering. And that's when you really start to come up. So your first year of learning Ableton is really going to be just like playing around, create 8-bar loops here and there, try different synths, save them for later if you like something. And then once you start learning more and more, you learn how to clean it up, make it sound professional. Okay, so let's go ahead and just listen to this. This is a track I made about a month ago. I'm just gonna play you guys like the verse and then into the break, and then I kind of break it down real quick and go through it. It might be a bit loud. If it is, please let me know. Otherwise, you might want to turn down the volume if it is. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna play it. Where is it? So here we go.
Turn off your conscious mind.
Okay. So you kind of got a little intro to it. You know, you got the verse, you got the break, the drop, and then you know the chorus, a little bit of vocals here and there. So let's go ahead. I want to start off with the effects because one of the sounds I actually was pretty happy with. So what I did is I grouped them. You can see it's really good to organize your track to make your life easier. You can see here I have little notes on, like, you know, my verse, my break, my drops, chorus. The way you can do that is if you basically, like, here. So you see those little tabs? If you right click on one of them, you say add locator. And you can say, oh, you know, add drums. And you can see it throughout my entire track, how I have them all throughout the track. It really makes your life easier, guys. Trust me. This would be the first thing you should start doing once you're making tracks. Once you get your sounds and drums and all that done, add these locators because they're going to organize your track. You're going to be able to navigate a lot better and organize it much easier. And another thing also to practice is group your categories. You know, I have drums, my sub bass and lead, synth plugs, synth leads, ambience, FX perks, vocals, and these are just added for prior. No need to look at them. But let's look at an example FX that I did. So I'm going to open the group. The way you can do that is you select your sounds, right click, and you go to group tracks. And then it creates this little group for you. You can color code it how you want. And so what I'm going to do, if you look right here, there's these little S's. What these are is basically you're soloing your track. Basically saying you're only wanting to play that sound and that sound only. So let's say I want this one, my FX synth. So let's take a listen to this one real quick. Oh yeah, up here, if you guys look, you can navigate your track by just clicking and holding. If you go right to left, it goes right to left. If you go up and down, it zooms in and out for you guys. So it makes it really easier if you have a 7-minute track. Hello? Oh, sorry guys. For some reason, the video stopped, skipped for me. I just needed to make sure you guys are still watching. Okay, yeah. So this sound. So I'm going to kind of break it down and how I did it before time runs out. Let's see. So let's hear it again. Okay, if you hold Alt and then use your scroller on your mouse, you can make this wider. If you hold it without, you can scroll up and down on the view, and then if you hold control and you scroll down, you can actually zoom in. So let's give this a listen. If you click the sound, it's going to start from wherever this bar starts. So one thing we're going to have to look at. So this is I need to take you guys to the automation view. So it's right over here, this little like two little dot looking thing. If you click that, what automation is basically you're taking effects and then you're changing them over time. So this one is, you can see right here, I'm using the auto filter effect, which is an EQ8 version of EQ8, and I'm basically creating a high pass over time, allowing for the higher, I'm creating a low pass, allowing like the higher frequencies to come in over time. So this is a preset, a wavetable preset that I got. So let's see. Let's turn off these effects. I don't have much effects I added to the preset. So by itself, yeah. This is the original sound, nothing special. Oh, well, it's a good heavy, pad. A little pluck in there. But I wanted to create a sound effect for transitioning between, like, say, a drop or like to a breakdown. So it's good to categorize, like, okay, this special effect is going to be used when I'm going from my chorus to my verse, or my verse to my breakdown. You want to create consistency in your track so that when the listener is listening to your track, they know, oh, this sound effect came on, that means they're going into a breakdown. So with tracks, you do want to make it a bit predictable for your listener, and then the way you hook them is with the melodies and with the sound design. That's what, and the percussion and the rhythm. So let's look to see what I did. This is a very let's see what I did. Hold on, let's see. So what I added is an LFO. What an LFO is, like, it's an oscilloscope that I can assign certain like knobs and features to. So if you look, this oscilloscope is jumping up and down. So let's watch to see what happens when the sound effect travels. There you go. So see right now what I'm telling it to do, the frequency rate right over here, I'm saying to start off really high so that this sound is jumping up and down in terms of the filter cutoff, letting the highs and lows come in and out, back to back. And then over time, I have it slow down, longer, wider waves. And then you can see here too, if you right click on a knob or any feature, you can actually go to show automation and it'll show you the automation. So now that we have the filter jumping up and down, over time, I kind of wanted to like disperse. I kind of wanted to like, not echo, but reverb away. And you can see like right now it starts at 50% wetness, and then over time it goes to 100%. And that's what really gives you the fading into like an empty room effect. And then now it's gonna start going up. So people call this washing out. When you add a bunch of reverb over time, you're kind of washing out the noise. You're basically adding so much reverb, it doesn't even have its original sound starting. And then I added an auto filter because I wanted to start off high and then lower down to more darker, more heavier sound. So what I did is that I added an auto filter, and then I right click and added show automation. And then what you do, one moment, let me just add some space here for you guys to see. There we go. Okay, so right now you can see I'm in autofill frequency and I'm changing it over time. So let me show you how it would look like if you started off without it. How can I Control Z for back. I can do the resolution for now. So when you start off, it's gonna look like this: little dotted lines. And then you're just gonna have to, you know, place your point. Right now I'm on a 1 bar segments, so each segment is 1 bar. But if you right click, you can actually select how many each segment is. You know, like say I want smaller increments to really get a fine tune. Let's do like quarter. Okay, that works. Yeah. So we can set a start point here, and I say, okay, I want the resonance to go up like 90%, and then bring it back down. And let's see how that goes. You heard that little like peak going? Maybe, let's see. And you can get really creative with this. You know, you can try out different patterns, see what you get. Let's see what happens. You know, when it comes to dubstep and rhythm, because you have all these different sounds, playing with the pitch and resonance over time can really, you know, can really add some really cool effects. You can see how it changed the sound a lot compared to what it used to be by just automating. Let's see. I'm just gonna have some fun and see what this does. Yeah, see? You know, like, sky's the limit when it comes to sound design. You know, like, you can... I know producers, I met producers, I've seen them do tutorials where literally they just take a kick drum and then they create a whole track out of it by using all these different instruments. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time. I'm gonna try maybe, let me see what else I can show you guys to kind of, because I'm gonna save the last 5 minutes to kind of go over some like little tools you guys can use in production. I think one of the biggest things I would like to kind of go over with you guys is the kick. The kick is pretty much the foundation of your track, especially when it comes to techno. The kick really sets the mood or sets the foundation of how your track is going to feel. You have something lighter kick for maybe house tracks, or you want to get darker in techno, you go much heavier and much more power behind it. So let's just take a listen to see how it sounds right now. So you can hear that rumble. That if you don't have headphones or good speakers, it's gonna be hard. And then let me show you what the original sound was. So I used a plugin called Kick 2, but if you were gonna use any other, you can just honestly go to a sample. You know, say kick. We have a MIDI track. Just go ahead and double click and see, now you have the kick and it's playing for you. There's a lot of information in Ableton and it's very hard to go through it within an hour, so I'm trying to give you guys the best tips right now to kind of help you get started. I'm just gonna go over what I did here, basically what a sidechain is. So I created a sidechain. So I have a sound coming in with my kick, and then a sidechain splits that signal to 2. So I have 2 kicks playing at the same time. I have my regular kick just playing, and then I have a reverb kick. So I just added a bunch of reverb on there, EQ'd it, added a saturator, a bunch of EQing, and then it went from this. Let's see, hold on. Why is it? from this to this. It's hard to notice when you don't have good headphones on, but when you're playing on large speakers, it really does come out. So I have 4 minutes left. I kind of want to go over a few little tips for you guys to get started in production. It's really good to have maybe a small keyboard, something like this MPK Mini. This is what I started off with. Just because like when you guys are trying to write melodies, it's hard to do it. The flow doesn't come out as right when you're trying to just like use a mouse and move it up and down. It's $120, but honestly, if you go onto Facebook Marketplace or OfferUp, Craigslist, I've seen people sell them for anywhere between $40 to $60, and they're really handy. And what I really like about them is not just the keyboard, but they give you these knobs right here. So you can actually have effects and then turn these knobs, and they will actually be assigned automatically or customly assigned to your effects in your presets, in your instruments, however you want it to have set up. And then they also do give you little drum pads. So, you know, you could take a drum rack, put a bunch of sounds like I showed earlier, and then you can, you know, create rhythms with that by hand. And it's a good way to really practice being on beat, being within tempo, which makes production easier once you kind of hone that down. I'm going to go through some plugins that you guys should also look into. I'm not saying you have to buy them, but one I would actually really like, you know, I'm a big fan of it, is Serum. I showed it to you earlier, and what's awesome about it is that it's very visual. It's a very visual plugin, and then it can really help you guys in producing. And everyone uses this. Everyone who uses any production software will most likely have Serum on their machine. Another one to look at, Native Instruments Starlight, great for producing ambience. I love this one. It's great for any genre of music or even movies. Native Instruments, look them up. Splice, check out Splice. What's cool about them is if you do a monthly membership, for like $13 a month, they give you credits, and then you can use those credits to buy like specific sounds, you know, 1 or 2 sounds or whole packs. They also have presets. There's a big community board on there, blogs you guys can reference that I use. Let's see, like here's an example, like, you know, a bunch of different sounds. You can download them, you get credits. They also have, you know, plugins, presets, you know, here's, I think Serum is on here, a bunch of Native Instruments. But like I said, Ableton does have everything you need. Plugins and presets does make it a little bit easier, but like I said, when you're first starting off, really dive deep into Ableton. You can use splice of by sound packs that you want and try, you know, dubstep, techno, house, when you're producing, maybe because like Ableton doesn't have those specifically. And then over time, you know, like, okay, maybe I want to try getting this this plugin or something and try it out. And then one last thing before I transfer it over, use Reddit. Big community out there, bunch of different subreddits for you guys to use, and yeah. So I'm gonna hand it off. I want to thank DMI and Make Music Alliance for hosting this. I'm gonna be transferring over to Brandon Delehoy. He'll be doing the same thing as me, but with FL Studio. Okay, have a good one, everyone.
Okay, he's done, and if you're already streaming, you should click it.
Okay, waiting for it to change over.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you to the previous streamer for showing off Ableton Live. Good stuff, good stuff. Hope everyone's having a great Make Music Day so far today. My name is Brandon. Today I'm going to take this hour to show you all about my favorite tool to use, FL Studio. I've been a music producer for the greater part of about a decade now, and today we're going to show you how you can make your own music from scratch using your own computer. So whether you're a DJ looking to see how your tracks are made, or if you're completely new to the music scene at large, hopefully this can give you some insight on just one of the ways that you can make music in 2020. So, before we begin, I want to give some quick shout-outs to Dance Music Initiative and the Make Music Alliance for making today possible, as well as Dilated Recordings for allowing me to use their streaming space and setup. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's begin with a big primer on music production at large. So, music producers can, in a way, be compared to directors of films, in that they have a hand in a lot of the creative steps that go into making their work of art. In the past, they have done such things as equip themselves with advanced studio setups, microphones, mixing consoles, soundproofed rooms, etc. They would invite musicians and bands to come in to make their art, to record them, maybe mix it a little bit. Nowadays, though, anyone can be a music producer, and all you need is a computer and a special piece of software that we call a digital audio workstation, DAW, DAW, etc., etc. FL Studio is but one of many pictured here on the far right. I'll let some of our nerdier viewers identify the first two. Let's see. So, why would you use FL Studio versus other DAWs, versus other of the many tools out there for you to make music? Well, I made a little list for you all. We're going to go through all these one by one, so let's tackle this here. So, you might consider using FL Studio if you enjoy listening to modern electronic music, or if you think that this is the type of music that you might want to make. The reason behind this being that these genres of music are generally pattern-based, and we're going to get to this in just a moment, but these types of music involve lots of repeating sounds that happen over and over and over again, and FL Studio has a very pattern-based workflow. So if that type of music strikes your fancy, then FL Studio could be a good pick for you. But I will also say that you can really make anything with anything. Don't think that FL Studio is limited to this type of music, or that FL Studio cannot make a specific type of music. In all honesty, you can make anything with anything. But if these particular genres are interesting to you, then FL Studio could be a good choice for you. Consider FL Studio if you enjoy pre-planning and perfecting things. So, I'll say first and foremost that one of FL Studio's shortcomings is that it wasn't built from the ground up with audio recording in mind or performing. So for some folks that could be a bit of a turnoff, but a good benefit of that is that you don't actually need to know how to play any instrument to use FL Studio well. You can just use your mouse and you can click and you can make things as perfect or as imperfect as you want, just using your mouse pointer and just click around. Also, I'm not very good at playing many instruments, so this session won't cover recording of any kind. If you're looking for that, my apologies. Consider FL Studio if you enjoy customizing or creating your own workspace. So, I'm going to demonstrate some visuals in just a second as well, but FL Studio, when compared to other DAWs, has very few rules with how you can arrange and lay out your own projects. So you can change colors, you can move things around all over the playlist, you can change the size of things, you can lock things. You can really make your own projects your own. You know, you don't have to abide by the DAW's rules of having this track go here and this track go right below it. Excuse me. So in that sense, it's very powerful so that you can make your own projects look the way, just as pretty as they might sound. Consider using FL Studio if you enjoy pretty software. This is a bit of a strange point, but I feel like if you're going to be using a piece of software for an extended period of time, it should look and feel good to use, right? So luckily FL Studio has got that in the bag. A lot of its colors are really, really vibrant, its animations are nice and snappy, and its UI is vector-based on top of all that, so no matter how big your screen is, if you have a tiny little netbook or a giant 4K monitor, FL Studio will look good on all of them. So finally, probably the biggest value proposition for FL Studio is their lifetime free updates policy. So if you enjoy value, you will absolutely enjoy FL Studio. So with other DAWs and other tools, music tools around the market, you can buy, say, version 11 at X dollars, but if they update that software to version 12, let's say, typically they would vendors and distributors, developers would charge an upgrade fee for you to get that new version and all that new content. But with FL Studio, you can buy it at version 20, and you get all the future versions and updates free of charge. So what I like about this is that not only do you get a really solid toolkit for you to make your own music right out of the box, it also expands over time. So if you were ever going to buy one DAW and you were going to stick with that for the rest of your life, FL would be a good choice for that because you will get a constantly refreshing, updating piece of software. All right. So coming up next, let's pull back a little. I'll show you a bit of FL Studio in action. So this is a screenshot of the main interface, of the main areas that you're going to be whenever you're writing your own music. Right now, it looks like a big blob of colors, lots of grids, lots of diagrams, and complicated looking things. But by the end of this presentation, you will know how to read this screenshot. So take it all in for a little bit, and we will tackle all this in just a moment. Okay, so now let's move on. So we're going to pull back a little from DAW and FL land, and we're going to talk about just generally one way that we can write a song. So you remember me saying that a lot of modern electronic music is made with patterns, right? So we can consider a lot of these songs as made up of patterns that repeat. For instance, a drum beat that plays a steady drum beat over a period of time. Could be a melody line that plays some kind of arpeggio or chord or something. Could be a bass line that's laying down a groove and you want that groove to go on for a long time and it just repeats. All these are types of patterns that music can be made out of. Then arranged in a special way that allows for things like build-ups, drops, intros, outros, verses, choruses, all of these bigger songwriting structures are made out of smaller patterns that loop. And a combination of patterns that loop can create a special mood that you can put in a song. And then finally, at the end of it all, the whole thing gets polished up and made perfect in very subtle ways. This is most often called the mixing process. So these three key steps of building your patterns, arranging your patterns, and making it all sound good are perfectly represented with FL Studio's three main environments here, namely the channel rack, the playlist, and the mixer. And we will go over them all one at a time, so let's begin with the channel rack. So the channel rack is going to be typically your first stop to making your song. This is where you're going to lay down some drum beats and things like that. That's where you make patterns. Don't forget about those two UI elements I highlighted there. That first one on top is going to be the pattern selector and creator. You're going to need to use that thing. That says pattern 1. You're going to need to use that thing in order to create new patterns and switch between the ones that you previously made. And then that thing on the bottom there, the orange pat light, that right there lets you preview your pattern in real time, so you can play it, loop it, and focus on just that single pattern. Okay. So we're going to go over two types of patterns to start off with. The first one being a basic drum loop. We're going to hop straight into FL now, and we're going to give this a live demo here. So you can see here we've got the three main parts of FL in the background, but we're going to focus just on the channel rack here. A little tiny. Hope you guys can see it well. I would also mention here as well, we should have this structure here visible as well. This is the file browser. You're going to use this section to drag in a lot of the audio files and sounds from your computer. in case you don't see that, somewhere up on the top bar here, you should see a file folder icon with a little fork below it. This is what will toggle visibility of that, so make sure you can see that. And then starting off here, we have the channel rack. If you have the default FL project loaded up, you should see it already starts you off with some sounds. If you want to preview a sound, what you can do is you can click on it. This one's just a basic kick drum, and you can click on the waveform itself to listen to it. Sounds pretty good. So here's a basic clap sound. This right here is a hi-hat. And finally a snare. These are the four kind of main drums that most electronic music is made with these days. So, very good solid set of sounds to begin with, but if you ever want to drag in your own sounds, to add in your own what we call samples, what you can do is on the file browser here, you can locate the packs folder, and this is going to be the FL Studio default set of samples. Every FL Studio install comes with these, so you should be able to see it and drag in your own stuff. I'm going to call attention to the drums and the drums mode audio folder. These are two folders full of very good, generally useful drum sounds that can serve as an excellent starting point for making your own beats. I'm pretty fond of the mode audio sounds because they're added in a more recently than the old drum sounds here, so definitely recommend giving as many of these a listen as possible. As you click around, very subtle differences here, but you'll be able to preview how every drum sample sounds. You can use your arrow keys to just flip through a lot of them. I'm going to drag in a kick here. So if you want to add in your own sound to your project, it's real easy. You just got to take one. Actually, I'll do this one. Take one, drag it in, just click and hold. You could drop it in right there. Additionally, you can also drag in, and if you hover over an existing sample and you let go, it will just completely overlap it, overwrite it, so that old sample's gone now, which is fine. What we want to do next, let's clean it up a little bit. So I'm going to delete this one, this duplicate that I just made. So I'm going to right click it, click on delete here, and then OK. And now we have a brand new kick. It looks like this, sounds like that. Additionally, one more way that I'm going to show you real quick to preview your sounds is that if you see this green light here, this means that this current sound is active, this current channel as it is. If you click on this green light, it means it's active, and you can press the Q key on your keyboard to play it live. And then you can press the down arrow key to move around. And you can preview all of your sounds pretty easily and quickly that way. I'm going to be doing this a lot throughout the presentation, so just want to make that abundantly clear first. And now what we can do here, now that we have our own sound, actually let's get a couple more custom sounds too. Let's get a special clap. This one sounds pretty crisp, pretty clean. We're going to get in a new custom hi-hat. Let's actually go into the default folder and check out some of these. Got some classic drum machine sounds. Ooh, 909. There we go, we gotta have that. And then let's find a good snare drum. Snares, what do we got? Well, the snare claps, I think these ones sound pretty good. Ooh, I like that one. Okay, let's drag this one over. Okay, so now that we have our set of sounds that we've selected with such careful attention to detail, we're going to start creating our own beat. So what you can do here real quickly is you can use this colorful grid here. This right here is called the step sequencer to arrange your drums and play them according to a beat. So all you need to do is just click on these little nubs and they will light up, and you can click the play button. Remember that you're in to be in pattern mode for you to play this specific pattern, and when you play it, we have a nice groove going. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. We're going to add in some more interesting elements right now, so we're going to use the snare that we just did, and we're going to add in the clap as well. We're going to layer that over. It sounds like this. A little fast for my liking. I'm going to slow down the tempo just a little to bring it down to a nice steady 120-ish. This is definitely the proper tempo for a classic house track, and this is definitely the starting point for a house track, a basic 4 on the floor beat. That's what we call it when you put the first, on the first beat, you have your basic kick drum. So 4 on the floor. It sounds like that. We're going to make it a little interesting with a hi-hat here. It's going to add in a little bit of high-end spiciness to it. And we have a groove. We have a groove. It's good. It's good. So keep in mind that this is just one way that you can make drums in FL Studio. Other folks have their own preferences. Some folks like to do it within the playlist itself. Some folks like to use plugins such as FPC or Battery. If those words mean nothing to you, don't worry about it. This is a good starting point, and I think personally that using the step sequencer in the channel rack for drums helps you use every part of FL to its strengths. This is designed to help you write down drums. I think it'd be a waste to not use it at some point. So we can do a bit of experimenting as well. If we don't want a 4 on the floor beat, we can always remove some hits with a right click. That's a really quick way to delete it. And we can, for instance, have a kick drum right here and right here. So it's just the first one, and then one that comes about 2 steps before the second snare. If we speed it up, actually, let me just show you real quick. This is exactly the formula for making a drum and bass type beat. Maybe if I remove the hi-hats. There we go. And you can start making some drum and bass real quickly. I'm going to head back down to 120 though, so we can just mess with something a little simpler and a lot slower, less complicated. Let's have these right here. And don't forget, if you ever want to change a part of your beat, if you want to add in a new sound, it's real easy. Just gotta drag in your very own sample from the side and you can just go ham. Good stuff, good stuff. And all that is located within the packs folder. You can, of course, customize it to add in your own sounds, but that goes a bit beyond the scope of this presentation. And if you'd like to learn more about that, then feel free to drop a comment and we can talk about that at the end if we got time. So that's how you make a drum pattern. Let's look at making a musical pattern here. So before we used what we call samples to create sound. Samples are another word for just a file on your computer. Drum sample refers to for instance, a WAV file or some kind of audio file that you can use to make sound, to drop it into your project and have that play many times over. In order to make music, what we're going to do is use a thing called a plugin to create sound. Plugins, you can think of them pretty intuitively as a virtual instrument that you can customize and tweak and program all by yourself. Or you can use preset sounds that other folks have made that sound just as good, if not better maybe. So let's start writing some music. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new pattern. It's a common beginner's mistake where they just write down every aspect of the song in the same pattern. It's really easy to do that, but in the long run that will make things very disorganized and you're going to have to spend some time to splice apart this giant bloated pattern. I think it's very, very neat, a very neat and tidy habit to create new patterns whenever you want to make a new idea for your track. So up here at the pattern selector, you can click on this plus button. That will create a new pattern, and it will prompt you to name it. We're going to type in just chords for now, because we're going to make some chords. So now that we've made our new pattern, you'll notice that the step sequencer just cleared. The step sequencer just cleared. If you wanted to switch back, you can click on this arrow, and then you can switch back to our original pattern 1, and it'll be right back here. But we want to work on some chords now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add in our very first virtual instrument. So you can do that really easily. You don't need to drag or drop anything. You just have to click this plus button. And then this folder structure here could look a little different for you. I did some customizing on my own. But what you want to do is locate a synth called 3X OSC. It could be in the synth folder, it could be elsewhere in the structure. I suggest you explore, get familiar with how this is laid out, and as with the file structure, we can go over how to customize this later if there's interest. So for now I'm going to add in a 3x OSC. It's going to be our very first instrument. It doesn't look like much. It looks like the console of a spaceship, if anything, but rest assured this is a musical instrument. So remember how I said that you can press Q on in the channel rack to preview your samples, right? Well, if you have an instrument selected, you can do that as well. And that's what this instrument sounds like. At first, this is what it just loads up with. Something I failed to mention earlier is that the Q key is actually a tiny part of a much bigger thing. With FL Studio, it actually turns your typing keyboard, you know, QWERTY, ASTIF, whatever. It turns your typing keyboard into a little mini tiny controller. So all the way from Q to, I believe, I is an octave on a piano, if that's familiar to you. And if you just type all the way up, Q, W, E, R, T, Y, U, I, that is one full octave of notes that you can just play around with and just mess around with ideas. You don't need to be good at it. You just need to be able to hear it, and you need to be able to judge, does that sound good? That doesn't sound good? And we'll try it out a different way, for instance. And then additionally, the number keys up top, specifically 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. Those are all the black keys on the keyboard. So if you want a complete sweep of the typing keyboard here for just one octave, we have this. Pretty easy. And then if you shift that down to the second half of your keyboard, down from Q to I, now from Z to comma, that is the octave below it. So take some time, get familiar with the typing keyboard. It's a very, very handy way to sketch out your ideas and to try things out with some sounds and stuff if you don't have your own MIDI controller available. Again, I don't have my own for today, so we're not going to go over connecting MIDI controllers or recording or any of that, but good stuff. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of tweaking to this plugin as it is, so that it sounds a certain way. We're not going to get in, we don't have enough time to get into much detail about it, but if you want to hear what it sounds like now, I just actually finished tweaking. We got this. So now we have what's called a saw wave, a waveform that looks like the teeth of a saw. Very cool. So we're going to do some really, really basic stuff with this simple sound here. That's as far as we're going to go for programming synth patches. So now that we have the sound that we want, we can write our actual music by right-clicking our instrument and clicking on piano roll. This is another pretty big part of FL Studio, but I like to lump it in with the channel rack because it contributes a lot to the process of writing your music. It's all tied into the channel rack, so I tend to group them together like that. And this is going to be where you're going to be employing, this is going to be where you will employ your music theory knowledge. So you can write down chords, melodies, using knowledge of scales and things like that. All of that is a bit beyond this workshop as well. I don't know too much of it myself, but for the purposes of this presentation, we're just going to make something real simple. So this giant grid is laid out in a pretty comparable way to the step sequencer, where these first 4 bars here correspond to these first 4 bars here. You'll notice that it's completely orange here. Just like the first half. It will line up a little bit here. So we're going to work just within these first 4 lighter stripes here, these lighter colors. And if you click play, we can actually hear we have music. Excuse me, I misspoke. It is just the first bar of these 4 bars. So just this much right here. Yeah, this is what equates to this amount of time in the step sequencer. Okay. So let's not make that a slide note. We're going to have a little note right there. We're going to have a note right here. This seems good. And I'm just going to throw down some chords here just for demonstrations purposes. There are plenty of really good music production, or that is music theory tutorials on YouTube. Lots of good music production tutorials on there as well. But if you'd like to learn music theory, that would definitely be the term to search for if you're interested in what I'm doing here in the piano roll. So we're gonna do something like, this is actually probably fine. Let's click play and hear how it sounds. Okay. Okay. We've got some basic chords now. This is what we call a minor chord here. I actually want to do something like this. I think if you change it this way, it changes the swingy kind of style of it. Just a little bit. Let's hear how it sounds. I think I want it over here, actually. There we go. Okay, and we got music. And this exact process is how you're going to be writing, your chord progressions. If you want to have really long patterns, you can have them extend further, and you can write your own melodies, all that jazz. It's really good. If you want to make your notes a little longer, what you can do is you can hover over the right side of a note and then hold, and you can extend the length of it. You can do that with multiple notes at a time. Very, very powerful. If you hold down Control and drag, you can select many notes at once. Very, very good. Very handy. I think FL's piano roll is one of its most strongest features, I think. A lot of other DAWs have piano rolls that do kind of the bare minimum. With FL Studio, there's a lot of advanced functionality you can get into working just within the piano roll. It's very, very nice. So, now that we have our musical pattern, I'm going to hop back into the... actually, wait, let me fix that. We did not... Here, okay. So, I just pressed escape to close the piano roll just then. So, I'm going to hop back into the presentation to show off one more slide regarding the channel rack and creating your own patterns. So, we just discussed the plugin 3XOSC, and that's going to be something that I will recommend to absolutely anyone to start out with, just with the fact that it's so simple to use, it's really lightweight on processing, it's really easy to get a nice simple waveform out. Typically this is my one-stop shop if I want a simple sine wave or a simple saw wave or something like that. In due time you will understand what those words mean. Like I said before, if there's interest, we will discuss it later on. So, 3XOSC is kind of old reliable for me. You'll see it says since 2000 down there in the bottom right. That is absolutely crazy that this piece of technology is older than a lot of producers nowadays. I love it. I love it. 3XOSC is always good. You can find it in most of my projects. But then also we have a new plugin that ImageLine, the developers of FL Studio, added in a fairly recent update. It's called Flex. This is something I wish I had starting out with, because Flex is a really, really good plugin for getting quick sounds that other people have made, and all you have to do is provide the music. You don't need to worry about sound design or programming the plugin at all. All these sounds are pre-made, preset, and you can just pick and choose whichever one sounds best for your song. If you have a bit of prior knowledge of plugins at large, you can compare this to maybe Nexus or Omnisphere. This is just FL Studio's take on that type of preset-focused plugin. Very, very good. I really do wish I had this when I started out, just because a lot of the free sounds that they offer for download sound very good. They sound very good. So, definitely go for Flex. Special shout out to the Essential Pianos library. If you buy FL Studio, you can download that library for free. And those pianos sound so much better than the default FL keys. I was running on FL keys for so long. Oh gosh. But of course these pianos exist and they sound very good. So definitely do recommend that. Moving on. That covers our bit on the channel rack. So we've made our patterns, we've made some drums, we've written some music. Now it's time to put it all together. This is where we're going to be writing our song, or doing our song writing processes. So inside the playlist is where we're going to be doing that. And let me just take a look at my notes here real quick. So yes, this is going to be the part of FL Studio where you're going to be building the actual content of your song. The playlist is where you'll be writing your verses, your choruses, your risers, your drops, your intros, your outros, etc. All of these bigger musical structures are going to be written in the playlist. And all these structures, as mentioned before, are going to be made out of a lot of smaller patterns of sounds. So let's tab on over to FL Studio and we'll take a look at doing that. You'll notice that the playlist is actually not visible right now. Well, if you look up here at the top right, you'll see this set of icons. This could look a little different for you, but this general set here of icons is going to be where you can toggle stuff, just as we toggled visibility of this file structure before. And now we're going to toggle the visibility of the playlist. It's going to be this first big icon right here, the square with some rectangles inside of it. So this is the playlist. It's big, it's empty right now, and if we switch over to song mode and we click play, nothing's going to happen because we didn't write any patterns yet. Our song is empty. Well, let's use our patterns to fill in our song. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at this top bar here. So you'll see that it says playlist arrangement chords. Now this part right here where it says chords is where you're going to be selecting the patterns that you're going to use to write your music. Now remember that pattern 1 is what we used to write our drums earlier. So with pattern 1 selected right here, you can see that again at the top bar of the playlist. And with the paintbrush tool selected, we can start painting inside of our song. And now, since we have our patterns in here, and we click play, we have officially audio. If we decided to save and export our song right now, it would be about, let's say 16-ish seconds long, and it would be this very basic beat. Let's see here. You can do special things in the playlist as well. I'm going to zoom in real quick just to show you how you can edit patterns in the playlist if you'd like. So if you wanted to have a bar where the beat kind of pauses for it to drop in right at the next bar right here, you can do that real quickly in the playlist. You don't need to edit the pattern at all. This does not change the underlying pattern. Just for this specific part, for this specific instance of the pattern, it cut it a little short. So you can do that in all sorts of creative ways to create some kind of interest within these looping structures here. Special attention goes to the slice tool, so that you can just slice things real quickly, real easily. Switch back to the paint tool. Just like with the step sequencer, if you right click, you can delete parts of it. But I'm just going to have this pattern play out for a little here. And why not? We're going to zero in on this pattern, and let's do some fancy tweaking here. If you hold down shift with the slice tool, it will snap to a vertical slice, and it will be perfectly in time. Very, very handy. I'm going to go back to the paint tool and just delete these so that we have a little bit of a fill here. A very simple fill, nothing that we wrote with toms or any fancy drum programming, but just a very basic way to create some interest at the end of this bar. Okay, and it did cut itself short here, but we're going to write some music. We're going to lay down our music very, very soon, so don't worry about this empty space here cutting it off. So, coming up next then is going to be the music, as I mentioned. So we're going to make sure to select our chords pattern that we just wrote, and then let's say, I don't know, let's introduce them right here. I'm just going to paint those all in. And now if we play it from the beginning, you'll hear that we have just our first beat here as an intro, but then very cool. So just the combination of both of these two patterns already created a musical idea that's more interesting than either of them by themselves. And in the playlist, that's where we did it. So we have this first section here where we don't have a lot going on except for the beat. And then in the second section here, we have the beat plus music. So you can really extend this idea even further. If you have even more elements to your song, you can introduce more of them over time. You can take some out. This is how a lot of basic electronic music is written in the first place. So cool, cool stuff. And then don't forget as well that the playback mode here switches between your song and your pattern mode. You'll see the little play head here, the play marker at the very left, disappear in pattern mode but show up in song mode in the playlist. So, all right. Okay, so back to the presentation. I'm going to give one little footnote here for the playlist as well. So something fancy that you can do, just a little bit fancier, is that you can actually drag in audio samples or audio clips. You can use those terms interchangeably. You can use audio samples directly in the playlist. They don't have to be connected to the channel rack at all. This is very handy for something like risers or reverse cymbals or downlifters. Those types of sounds I think are very intuitive to see rather than plan out inside the channel rack or inside the step sequencer. It could be difficult to determine the timing if you put them in their own pattern. So for instance, let's take riser sine field here. Let's actually make the song a little longer. We can do that really easily. Just like with the piano where you can hold down Control and then left click, and then you can select and move many structures at a time. And then I'm going to paste in more drums here, and then more chords here. And then I'm actually going to move this fill over here. Yeah, let's do a bit of rearranging. Do a bit of rearranging here. I want the fill to show up right before the music comes in. I want a steady beat to introduce the song. Okay, and then of course we'll get some beats here to fill in the space. Okay, so now our song's a little bit longer, about 32 seconds now if my math is right, yeah. We have around 8 bars of beat, and then another 8 bars of beat plus music. Very standard, very DJ friendly in that aspect. So if you do want to make your tracks easier to mix into a live set, definitely think about working with multiples of 8 bars here. One set of light and one set of dark stripes. And then this audio clip here was dragged in at the second half of this first section, right here. So we just dragged it in from the file browser and we dropped it in the playlist. And then we have it right here. You can see it, you can see the waveform, and that's already huge. If we drop that in the channel rack, we wouldn't be able to see it very easily. You know, we could see it right here, but we don't know how long it is in relation to the song. So having it just visible right here in the playlist is super handy. I definitely recommend doing this for, like I said before, reverse crashes, risers, downlifters, any kind of fancy S-effects, sound effects, or atmospheric kind of things. Very good to put in the playlist, for instance. And let's play it just to see how it all sounds. And that's how it be. That's how it be. You can experiment with, of course, all these different types of risers. You can layer them all together. There's no restriction really to how much you can add into FL Studio. Just limited to what your computer can handle, I believe. Very cool effects. And just like how you can edit patterns, you can also edit audio clips real quickly as well. If you don't like how high it goes, for instance, you can make it a little shorter and then have it start a little later. That's all fine. Let's just start right here. Cool. I think I like how that sounds a little bit better, so we'll keep it like that. So that about wraps things up for the playlist. So using all the patterns that you may, of course, you'll probably be making a lot more than 2 with a lot more different interesting sounds. You can use all the patterns that you make, and as well as any audio clips that you want to use in your song to make it as long and as interesting as you'd like. But for our demonstration purposes today, this is going to be fine. Very nice, very short, very simple song. And all this you can really extrapolate to minutes worth of audio with much more interesting moving parts to it. So, good stuff, good stuff. We wrote a song. Awesome. What's next? Well, it's the mixer, of course. So, as the previous two sections were very pattern based, you see you create patterns with the channel rack and you arrange your patterns in the playlist. The mixer is a bit of a black sheep here. The mixer doesn't care about patterns at all. It really just cares about sound. It's going to be the primary place where all of the sounds of your song, be it in the playlist, in your channel rack, if you can hear it, it should be going through the mixer where it's all going to come together, and this is where you will make everything fit and polished and personalized. Now, it does look a little intimidating at first. You can see it on the right, and when you compare it to a hardware mixer, like on the left here, you'll see it's pretty intimidating. It's just a huge array of knobs and dials, loads of colors, and just so much controls. If the previous plugin didn't look like a spaceship console, this one absolutely does. But rest assured, it is actually very easy to read once we get the hang of reading just one of these structures. We'll go over that very, very soon. Let's see here. So every sound that you use in your project, be it a drum sample, audio sample, vocals, etc., a plugin even, that also counts. Every single sound that you use in your project can be assigned to what we call a mixer track, or mixer insert, or mixer channel track insert, etc. Yeah, all these mean the same thing basically. And these are where you can tweak some settings regarding your sound, just some really quick controls to make it sound a little bit better in your mix, and then also you can customize that sound with 10 special slots for effects. I'm going to hop back into FL to show off what exactly that looks like. So just like before, we don't see it. We can use this icon up here. It looks like a little tiny mixer here with some 2 vertical sliders to make it show up. This is the mixer. I'm actually going to make it a bit bigger for our presentation's sake, because you can do that. It's great. And this is it. This is going to be the mixer. Honestly, it could look a little different to you. If it does look a little different from this, you can click on this button right here where it says wide, and you can change it to however you prefer. There are lots of different mixer visibility presets here, even extra large if you have trouble reading the tiny font. I know that happens to me sometimes too. Compact is one of my personal favorites, speaking of tiny font, just because of the wealth of information and how many tracks you can see at the same time. It's very good. Okay, let's go back to wide now, because I believe this is what FL Studio starts with, so this is what most people should be familiar with. And let's see, there's nothing actually we can do right off the bat. The first thing we're going to do is head back into the channel rack, and we're going to assign our drum here, our kick drum, to channel 1. That's what this little section here is for. You can drag up and down, and it will assign it to one of the mixer tracks. I'm going to put it on the first one. And then you'll see that these drum samples are already routed to 2, 3, and 4. And if we switch to pattern mode and play it, we can see some activity. I'll actually shrink it just a little so I can click around. Good stuff, good stuff. You'll notice that the cowbell here is not synced, or it's not routed to any track, but we can still hear it. That's because I want to pay extra attention to this one right here called the master. Now, every single sound that goes through FL Studio will end up going through the master. If you can hear it, it's going through the master. And this is a special channel, a special track that you can mute. You can put effects on it for what we call a mastering kind of purpose. But just know that the master is a special track and it exists, and every sound is routed to it by default. Even though we're sending the kick into 1, the 1 is going out to the master, so you can still hear the kick. And you can get real fancy with routing if you want to like route 1 into 7 and then 7 goes into 9 or things like that. We're not going to get too complicated today. We're going to keep things real simple for the tutorial here, but this is typically how you might make an effect send if you're familiar with that workflow with other software. And also this could be how side chaining is done as well. Advanced topics for a later time perhaps. So let's take a look at one of these mixer tracks from the top to bottom so we can read how we can hear it. Or so we can learn how to read it, that is. My bad. Okay, so from the top down, we can see that we have our number 1 here. This is our first track. We have our volume visualizer here on the right side. It's highlighted in that green rectangle. And here is our name. In fact, I highly recommend you rename your mixer track so it all lines up well. So you can right-click it, click on Rename, Color, and Icon, and we'll just call this Kick. So now we can see that this is the kick channel. We can use this button here to mute it, so we don't hear the kick now, or we can right-click it to solo it, so we only hear it. Notice that the cowbell is still playing because the cowbell is not routed to any mixer track, so it does not get muted. If we were to route it to, say, number 5, now it's muted. And we can only hear the kick because we're in pattern mode, and the kick is the only sound that's playing, that's running through the mixer, and it's the only one active. You can right-click it again to give you the full effect, to unsolo it. Okay, so we have our mute solo button. Here we have our panning control, so you can shift the balance of the sound to either the left or right channel, left or right speaker. Again, I'm going to solo it so it's more obvious. You may hear this effect be more pronounced if you're listening with headphones or a good speaker setup, so we're going to mess with panning now. Here it's just coming out of the left, and if we turn it to the right, it's only coming out of the right. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. We got some advanced controls here on the side. We're not going to talk about that, but this big knob here is going to be very important. This is going to be your primary volume control for this specific sound. So for the kick, we turn this down. It's going to be quiet. Very quiet. And essentially muted here. But we can also make it just a little bit louder if we want. I tend to keep it at around the maximum here, the default. You can middle click to reset any control to its default state in FL Studio. So I like to keep louder things at the default level rather than pushing it all the way up above 100%. I just like to keep it right here at 100. And you will be messing with this a lot. We will talk more about this specific volume slider very soon. But that is essentially how you read a mixer track. And since you know how this one works, now all of the other ones work exactly the same way. It does look intimidating at first just because of the sheer quantity of it all, but once you know how a single one is read, you'll know how all the other ones work. So if you ever visit a studio in person, you can probably ask the engineer what this track is for. They might have tape physically on their console to label it, that this is the drum kit, this is this mic, this is the guitar, etc. Here we can just label it and just have fun, all digitally. It's so good. Okay. Now let's talk about, oh yes, I talked about all of this already. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about effect chains. So, as I mentioned before, not only do we have those basic controls in every mixer track, but we also have 10 slots for special effects that we can apply to our incoming sounds to make them more interesting, to personalize them, to make them sound better in relation to other sounds in our song. And we use what we call effect plugins here in order to do that. Now these are a little different from instrument plugins. As if you remember that, instrument plugins are what we use to generate sound. Effect plugins are primarily used to affect sound, to apply some kind of processing onto the sound to change it in some way, and then spit that back out. So an effect plugin on its own should not generate any noise on its own. It needs incoming sound for it to mess around with, and then it spits out the affected sound. So we're going to take a look at adding some basic effects onto our drums here, just to start off with. Let's actually, let's actually apply it to the music instead. I think that could be more interesting, more apparent. So what we're going to do here is we're going to route our synthesizer to its own insert track. Let's just put it on like 10. And we're going to rename it, just to be responsible, call it synth. And then here on the right is going to be our 10 effects slots. Now if you click on one, we can see a folder list kind of similar to the one that we used to select our instrument plugins. We are running a bit low on time, so I'm going to keep it pretty quick. Let's see, there are lots of different effects that you can add into your sound to make it more interesting. I'm going to add what we call reverb here. And if we play it, we'll see, we'll hear mostly, that we've added a little bit of an echo to the sound. It's now existing in a little virtual space. A little bit of reverb makes everything sound a bit better, in my opinion. Actually, that's a common beginner's trap. Try not to overdo it with reverb. And we have that. Our synth is now being affected by the reverb. We can add more effects too if we want to distort it. We can add in, let's see, where is it? Fruity Wave Shaper. This is a default distortion plugin that FL Studio comes with. You can just drag up on this curve here, and you can really just mangle the sound that way. One of my personal favorite effects. You can use the mouse wheel to move your effects up and down. Something that's very important to note is that these effects go in a series. It goes in this specific order. So it will go, the synth will go into the distortion, and then it goes into the reverb. If we switch the two, the reverb will be distorted now. Depending on the effect you want, you may or may not want that. In this case, I think I want the distortion to go before the reverb. So, adjust to taste and explore, experiment, and you will have you will find lots of different flavors just with how you reorder your effect plugins. It's quite powerful, actually. You are limited to just 10. There are a couple hacky ways that I showed off in the slides right here. I'm not really going to go over them in detail because A, we're running out of time, and B, it's a bit beyond the scope of the presentation. So at this point, I'm not sure if we'll have time for questions, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So here are a couple more different types of effects. So I showed off reverb. There's another plugin type, another effect type called delay. It adds kind of a physical echo. If you're ever shouted into a canyon before of some kind, you might remember hearing something like echo, 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 echo. That is a delay versus a reverb, which is more like a spread out spatial kind of echo. A delay provides those concrete repeating sounds. DJs might be familiar with a filter. You can use, just like how you can use filters to adjust the emotion of a mix, you can also put in filters on individual sounds in your own song to create some kind of emotional effect. I like to use them with downlifters or build-ups to increase or decrease the tension. We showed off distortion, very, very good. Try distorting your drum sounds. Very, very good results can come out of that. You can use phasers here as to add in a kind of watery, aquatic kind of motion to your sound. I know Daft Punk used a lot of phasers in their album Discovery. Very iconic, very famous. And then finally, two important kinds of effects that you definitely should be aware of are equalizers, or EQ, and compressors. Now, both of these are important plugins that we use more in the mixing stage, but we can also use elsewhere at other points in the song too. And we're going to go over some very basic, very quick mixing tips here. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to adjust the volume here. So the first big half of mixing is volume management. And you'll notice that with the distortion and the reverb, the synth is a little hot. It's a little loud, and on the main meter here you can see it's going past zero, the zero mark here, and it's in the red, and that's bad, generally speaking. So if we turn it down a little bit, it's a much more manageable level. And this is just a pointer, of course. Not saying that it's a hardcore rule that you have to follow if you want your music to sound good. This is just a suggestion to get your music to sound not bad. You know, good is subjective, and you might enjoy the kind of sound that comes out of, you know, pushing a sound a little too hard. But generally speaking, use your volume sliders here to adjust your levels to put things in the foreground or the background. We're also going to discuss EQ as well, so we're going to add in an EQ plugin. We're running pretty low on time, so I'm going to make this super quick. EQ plugins change how the frequency makeup of your sound is. So if we have a little dip and a kick, let's play it in the context here. You can make it really obvious or really subtle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add another EQ onto the synth, and we're going to do the opposite of what we just did to the kick. So if we have our synth visible. Going to make the middle a little bit more accentuated, and we're going to lower the bass here. And then notice that the shapes are somewhat complementary. Right here. So wherever there's a peak in the kick, there is a cut in the synth, and vice versa. There's a peak in the synth, there's a cut in the kick. Very, very good, quick tip to getting started on how, getting started with a good sounding mix. You would do this. I would recommend putting in an EQ on all of your tracks and doing that kind of complementary matching to make some parts stand out and some parts stand back, so that the best of each sound is brought to the forefront. There are things called compressors that we absolutely don't have time for, but definitely give that a Google. That's another way that producers and engineers can change the volume as well. For now, like I said before, make sure your master channel doesn't go too far into the red in context. So with everything playing here, if you look at the master, it is a little loud, so I will make things a little quieter. And now we'll see that we are much better here. We're not hitting 0. So you can see the complementary curves on the right. You can see the volume editing on the left. Again, you do all of this in the mixer, so all these are effects and the main volume controls, so that you can use it to make your sounds even better than they already are. Here's the final picture of FL Studio. We have seen the 3 main structures here, the big playlist in the background, the channel rack on the right-hand side, and the mixer at the bottom right. All of these 3 elements work together in a very harmonious way for you to create your own personal, good-sounding music. So, you can export things. If you click on File, Export, you can turn your playlist, your song, into a file that you can play on your phone, in the car, upload it, etc. All that good stuff. Just wanted to mention that real quick at the end. Finally, thank you so much for watching. We did end up rushing a little bit at the end there, but I think if you understand those 3 core concepts of FL Studio and music production at large, then I think you can get a really good head start on creating your very first songs. So, thank you so much for watching. If you stuck around for this whole hour, I really do appreciate it. Thank you again to Dance Music Initiative, the Make Music Alliance for making today possible, as well as to Dilated Recordings down there at the bottom right of your screen for making this whole streaming setup possible. If you'd like to catch up with me and my music, you can find me on all the streaming services, Brandon Delehoy. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, that's where I'm mostly active. Just last year in December, I released my debut album, Metropolitan. If you could check that out, I'd appreciate it. Coming up next, we have the one and only BChang, who's going to be demonstrating some fundamentals of DJing. So definitely tune into that. It's going to be a good watch. So thank you again, everyone, for watching. I will hopefully see you soon. Make music every day.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Oh, good morning. Greetings. So my name is DJ BChang, and I'm here to give you a intro to DJing, DJ 101, and I've divided it up into two parts. So the first part is going to be more of a history and culture lesson of DJing. We'll sprinkle in a little bit of DJ philosophies here and there, and then we'll take some time to go over all the equipment just to kind of show you what all the different buttons do and stuff. So before I begin, I'd like to thank Dance Music Initiative as well as Make Music Alliance for making this whole thing possible. And huge shout out to Dilated Recordings for facilitating the stream. Without their help, we wouldn't have been able to make this as cool as it is. So, okay. So I want to start off my my lecture with just a question to the audience, right? So what does a DJ do? So think about that a little bit. A DJ obviously, literally plays music, right? And they don't just play music; they play music for typically at parties or at events. And what are people doing at those events? Well, most of the time they're dancing, right? So a DJ is playing music for people to dance to. But their job is a little bit more in depth than just going through those motions of just playing music, right? A robot can do that. We can have an iPod just playing music for people to dance to. But a DJ does a few steps beyond that that makes it a little bit more engaging and a little bit more human and interesting. So one of those things is that they're focusing on setting the vibe for the event. And what I mean by that is picture an event, right? So let's say you're at a pool party, and that pool party has people lounging, the sun's out, it's nice and warm. It's a pretty chill vibe. It's not like a huge dance party. It's more like kind of a fun, just like kind of like nice, pleasant, relaxing experience, right? So a DJ at a pool party might play music that has more of a warmer tone to it, or like more of a loungy vibe, right? Something that you can kind of like sit in your beach chair and kind of just like bob your head to, right? Have some drinks on the side, all that. So that's kind of like playing appropriate music and setting the vibe for that event. Now let's say you're a DJ and you're playing like a huge main stage set, right? At EDC or some other big festival, right? If it's like peak time and you really, the crowd has been waiting all day for your performance, and you get up there and you want to really amp up that crowd and get them to, to jump up and down and raise their hands. You need to play some really energetic music, right? So it's all about picking and selecting the right music that's most appropriate for that moment in time. So that's about setting the vibe. Now, another thing that DJs do are they're kind of the captain of the party ship, right? So they pick the vibe, but then they carry that vibe and they develop it over the time of their whole performance. So they might start off real easy, right? And then kind of amp up the energy gradually over time until it reaches this big peak. And then maybe at the tail end of their set, maybe they bring it down a little bit more, right? That's what a lot of DJs call taking you on a journey, or maybe telling a story. But generally, it's this narrative that passes over the whole set. It's not just one song, a collection of individual songs. It's a whole set of songs that has some kind of progression, and that progression is up to the DJ. Another big part of steering the party ship is, observing the crowd and making sure that, what you're playing makes sense. You're getting a reaction. People are dancing. People are into it. People are tapping their feet. If you see a lot of disengagement or people leaving the party or going to the bar to get drinks or whatever, you might need to switch gears, right? What you thought the party was going to be going into it might not be, really landing with this particular audience at this time. And that's something you can't control. So as a DJ, do you continue and just, plow forward and cross your fingers? Or do you, add value to the event and adjust like a human should and pick music that might get them going? So you might adjust and you might select different tracks and try to get them engaged, right? So that's steering the party ship. So the other role a DJ plays is they're a tastemaker. And what I mean by tastemaker is that they're selecting specific tracks that, one, they think is good, that they think is appropriate for party, they think it's appropriate for this point in time, but really they're trying to share music that they think is special or really awesome, and they want to share it with the crowd. DJing is a very a collaborative kind of experience. So now, if you were, let's say, on the radio, right, and you know, the record labels are paying you lots of money or whatever to play specific songs, you know, that you're more like you're doing a job, right? Versus if you're playing more of the tastemaker role, you might be, you know, digging real deep and finding unknown acts or you know, lesser marketed artists to play music that you just think is like super cool, right? And that more people should hear. That's a way for a lot of these smaller acts to get discovered. So yeah, taste making has always been an important part of DJing. Okay, so now we've covered a little bit about what DJs do. Now let's talk about some different kinds of DJs. So I'm going to hit 3 major kinds. One, there's where the name DJ came from, referring to like a radio DJ. So if you take the 2 letters D and J, what do they stand for? Now it just means this idea of that you have a person performing and mixing music, right? But originally, DJ stands for disc jockey, right? Nowadays, you don't have very many DJs spinning discs anymore. It's all digital, right? People are rolling up with MP3s or computers, whatnot, and that's how they DJ music. But back in the day, you would play records, and that would be the disc part of DJ. And what they would do is they would set the needle down onto the record, and they would, you know, let it play the groove, and that would be the needles like riding the groove, right? And so they came up with this term jockey because a jockey rides a horse, while a DJ rides the groove with the needle, right? So they're a disc jockey. So that's one kind of DJ. Those DJs were really about, you know, taste making and like getting the word out there about artists. Whereas you would say you have like a club DJ, which is our second kind of DJ. Club DJs or performance DJs, artist DJs, those DJs are putting together sets, oftentimes of sometimes their own original music or other tracks that they've collected along the way and creating that journey experience I described earlier. These DJs are playing sets that are already kind of like with a vibe in mind. Sometimes they're off the cuff, sometimes they're pre-constructed, but they're trying to, you know, tell a story that represents them as an artist. And then you have what's called mobile DJs. Mobile DJs are entertainers. They are service for hire. These DJs will get hired or booked to play, say, a wedding or a corporate event or perform at a an outdoor cultural event or whatever, right? So those events are still extremely important and valuable, right? That they're still DJing, but it's just a different mindset, right? Oftentimes, when you book a mobile DJ, you might have some songs already in mind, right? Let's say it's your wedding and you want a specific song for the bride entrance or a specific song for the father-daughter dance or whatever. You would work that out with the DJ ahead of time, and they would make sure that they play those on cue. They maybe will announce the event, which is called an MC, a master of ceremonies, and make sure that they're hitting all these cues along the way. So they're doing a lot of work, and they're providing an extremely valuable service for your special day. And so that's just a different kind of DJ, right? And their goal is just to kind of keep the party happy and going and keep that energy up. But all of them are playing music, and primarily the club and mobile DJs are specifically playing dance music. All right. So so let me ask you a philosophical question, one of them being, what makes music danceable? Okay? So I'm going to give you a couple seconds to think about what is the most important thing that makes music danceable. All right? You got some ideas? Okay, when I ever ask the crowd this question, usually the number one answer is a beat. Okay, so a beat is super important to making music danceable, right? A beat is that solid kick drum, and that helps people know where to put their feet. So if the beat is going bum, 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 they know to go right, left, right, okay? So beats are super important for dance music, okay? That's not exactly the answer I'm looking for. Another answer that people say is rhythm. Well, rhythm is very tied into beats. Rhythm is more like a collection of beats, right?